Welcome back and many thanks for staying with us on NTV at 1. Now let's get into our conversation this afternoon. Officials in the Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy in Uganda CCEDU have been presenting their proposed electoral reforms to Parliament. They are looking for changes on the provisions on term limits for elected leaders, as well as proportional representation as a more effective system in a multi-party political system. To explain at length what was presented, we have Chris Nkwatsibwe, from the Uganda National NGO Forum, and he joins me right now in studio. Many thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much.
Now, what are some of the key points in your presentation to Parliament?
So, good afternoon, viewers. Earlier this morning, we were before the Parliamentary Committee on Legal and Parliamentary Affairs. And for us, we take this as yet another opportunity for civil society to continue the message we have been giving over a long period of time about the need for credible and meaningful electoral reforms that, if implemented, would guarantee free and fair elections. And it's also good to remember that this is not the first time we are appearing before the committee, that earlier in 2015, we appeared before the committee and presented meaningful proposals to Parliament, but Parliament did not consider these proposals because of time. And at this point, I think we are glad that this process is happening a little bit earlier, and we're looking forward to hoping that Parliament will implement the proposals we have put to them.
So let's break down some of these proposals, just in jigsaw bits.
So there are quite numerous proposals. I think it's also important to note that what we were doing this morning was to present our analysis of the bills that have been presented by the Attorney General. So some of the proposals that we have noted, or some of the challenges we've noted with the bill, is the fact that the bill does not provide for explicit prohibition of the army and public officers from engaging in electoral processes. And as you remember, the Supreme Court ruled that the army and other public officials should not public officials should not engage in partisan politics. The second one is about the eligibility of independent candidates. We think that prohibiting independent candidates from standing for elective position without leaving their official political parties 12 months before nomination is a little bit regressive, because it goes against the basic principles of freedoms of association, freedom to participate in electoral and political and governance processes, and it contravenes Articles 1, Article 72, Articles 20 of the Constitution of Uganda. So those are some of the proposals. Of course, there are also proposals about voters' cards. So the bills provide that they are extending the time to, within which voters can access new or duplicate voters' cards when they lose their voters' cards. Whether it's the current law now provides for 7 days before election, but they are extending that time to 30 days. We think this is potentially harmful, and it's going to differentiate quite a number of voters who might lose their cards just within a month to elections.
So what is your position on people who commit violence during campaigns? So
the bills that are before Parliament, the Presidential Elections Amendment Bill, the Electoral Commission Amendment Bill, do not specifically talk about violence during elections. But it's also important to know that violence is criminal in nature, and violence in elections is criminal in nature. What we have seen is just continued impunity of different sides in our election processes.
You think banning a candidate for 5 years would be enough punishment and a deterrent to avoid violence?
I think also the law currently provides that if someone is convicted of having committed election offenses, cannot stand in an election for about 7 years. And I think that is a deterrent. But the problem that we have faced is that the threshold that is put there is about conviction, and it's like criminal conviction of committing criminal offenses during elections. But what we see now is that for candidates that are found to have committed irregularities, always go back and stand in by-elections. But I think that's one of the challenges, and we point that out in our analysis, that we want to have the law provide for explicit barring of candidates who are found to have committed election-related offenses from participating in elections in the by-elections.
So what is your position on the representation of special interest groups?
We have been clear in the past, even in the Citizens Compact for free and fair elections, that special interest groups like the army should not be represented in parliament, because that goes against their character to be non-partisan. As you know, that when our army members of parliament are in parliament, they sit on the government side. And I think that because parliament, essentially the way it is constructed now, is partisan in nature, if you have army that is supposed to be non-partisan, that's supposed to be protecting the integrity and the borders of this country in parliament, in a partisan space, that violates their own character.
One of the proposals here, you want a candidate who's unopposed to be given a 50% margin. Why is that?
I'm not sure that we have that in our analysis. I don't know whether you've had a chance to look at our analysis.
I've had a chance to look at it, and the declaration of a candidate who is unopposed, you've fronted a proposal that they should be given a 50% margin. I
think the proposal that is in there, it relates to when a candidate steps aside, when a candidate steps, when a race where you have two candidates and one of them dies or one steps aside, the provision that is in the current bills provides that the Electoral Commission should declare the remaining candidate as winner. And we're saying that is a little bit regressive, because you have not given voters an opportunity for them to choose. So we are suggesting that when one of the two candidates steps aside or dies, there should be another process that allows fresh nominations for people to express interest.
Indeed. Now, another proposal here, you talked about the involvement of the Public Service Commission in the appointment of the Secretary to the Electoral Commission. Yes. What will this achieve?
So I think this is one of the most critical proposals we've made over the past 5 years. That the independence of the Electoral Commission is very critical to the substance and nature of the election we have. What we have apparently are contestations about the independence and the credibility of the current Electoral Commission. And this comes about in the way they are appointed. You find that the President is the one who appoints the Electoral Commissioners. So we are suggesting a transparent and competitive process led by the Public Service Commission. Not this, I think the Public Service Commission, or a commission that is established to conduct public hearings and have commissioners that are elected or that represent a competitive, that have come through a very competitive process.
Mr. Nkwasibe, this is a very exhilarating conversation, and we could go on and on and on, but I'm afraid we're running out of time. Now, in a nutshell, in the event that government doesn't expedite any of the proposals you fronted to them today, what would be your next
So it is critical to know that these proposals are not just civil society organizations' proposals. These are proposals that have come from stakeholder consultations across the country. The Citizens Compact for Free and Fair Elections represents the views of citizens across the country. We conducted consultations across the 14 regions in this country. In any democracy, Article 1 provides that the power belongs to the people. This parliament is a parliament that is composed of representatives of the people. It is our view that as soon as Parliament starts debating these issues, citizens should be able to contact their members of Parliament and ask them to advance this message, to advance the proposals.
I'm afraid we'll have to leave it at that. Mr. Nkwasibe Chris from the Uganda National NGO Forum.
Thank you so much.
Many thanks for coming and joining us on NTV at 1. You're still watching